Discord bots, the sauciest thing around these days. Now I'm going to show you guys how I would code a Discord bot. Now I really am not claiming to be a good developer, because a lot of people know that my shit is just pure spaghetti, because I actually coded a bot before, DEA bot. It's terrible. I mean, the outside, it looks great. You use the commands, pretty clean, nice style, right? But then you see the code and you just die. Anyway, I'm gonna show you guys how to do it regardless. So obviously we got some spaghetti. Well, what do you put on the spaghetti? You put a bit of sauce, right? So yeah, sorry for like narrating while I was explaining this. You go on discord.app, then you go developer zone. Once you're in there, you can go on apps, add a new app, give it whatever name you want. This is going to be the name of your bot. Now that the app is created, you need to create a bot user to actually be able to add it to servers. Now we have the bot user, it officially exists. So we're going to click here to get the token. This is the token you'll need to log in to your bot. Now, you're supposed to keep this secret. You might be wondering why I have it open to everyone in this video. I can always generate a new token. Now, to be able to add this bot to your server, you're going to have to go down here, click on this tab. Then you're going to see this link right around here, adding bots to guilds. You can copy this, paste it into your browser. You go back to your apps, to the bot that you want to use. You take the client ID. Then right here, you're going to see a huge long list of numbers. You want to take this and just copy paste your ID of your bot in the place of that other long number. Then you press enter and bam, you have your bot that you can add to any server that you have the manage server permission. Now for the testing purposes of this bot, I created a server called Sauce and I'm going to add that bot to it. Now that I clicked authorize, once I go on Discord, and boom, Sauce is in the server. Hot fucking damn. Now you might be thinking like, okay, well that's great, dude. He's here. How do I use the shit? How do I use the goddamn commands? And then you're thinking like, oh my god, bot isn't responding? Is the bot broken? But you see, this isn't gonna do anything unless you actually have the code running it. So let's go do that right now. Now, what I'm gonna be using is Visual Studio's Community 2017. If you want to be able to follow along with me, you have to use the 2017 version of Visual Studios. The reason being is this version of Visual Studios is actually optimized for .NET Core, and that's exactly what I'm gonna be using to be able to make the Discord.net bot. Then just download the 2017 community version, and when you're downloading it, it's going to give you a window with a bunch of stuff you can check. Be sure to check the core option. It's going to say Entity Framework Core for multi-platforms. I believe that's what it says. You check that and then you install Visual Studios. Alright, so once you got that installed, you're going to be here. Very clean. I set it to dark mode because it kind of kills my eyes if I have Visual Studios on the light mode. Now you can change this in Tools, Options, General, and then you change the color theme right here. Alright, so now to making the fucking bot. You're going to go to File, New, Project. We're going to create the project of the application. Now it has to be a console app for .NET Core. If this says .NET Framework here, it just doesn't say anything, just says console application, that's not good. It should be a .NET Core since you are in 2017 and you did install Core. Gonna give the application a name. Oh, and also, it does say .NET Framework here, but that doesn't get taken into account if you choose the .NET Core application. Choose the directory in which it's in, and then you just do OK. Alright, now we got Sauce going. Very clean stuff. So first off, we gotta add the Discord.net dependency to our program. You go to manage NuGet packages for the solution, and then you're going to browse. And what you're going to be looking for is discord.net. Now, it's very important that you have include pre-release checked, because if you don't, you're going to be downloading the old 0.96 version. And if you have this version of discord.net, your shit is broken. There's a bunch of core issues with the 0.96 version that have not been fixed and never will be fixed because it's completely unsupported. All the effort is being put into the release candidate version, and this is where all the shit is. If anything, this release candidate version is more stable than the 0.9 version. What you're going to want to do once you have include pre-release checked and you looked up discord.net, you install the version, you click I accept, then you're going to need commands as well. Then you'll need core, and finally WebSocket. So once you have all of these, we can go back to the program.ca. Now right here you have the classic using system and the hello world. Oh man, just beautiful code. So what you're going to want to do is make this a public class because we're going to need to call it later. Now let's add two namespaces using Discord and using discord.websocket. Now let's just declare some private objects. So first off, we need the client, which would be a Discord socket client. We will name that as so. And the underscore at the start of the object name, that's because it's private. The norm for all private variables is putting an underscore at the start. Now we're going to add one more dependency, but this one is actually not Discord, it's actually system.threading.task. Now the reason we need this is so that we can create a task, because this entire API of Discord is almost all asynchronous. Asynchronous basically means you just have to use tasks instead of normal methods, except for your event handlers. That might not mean much to you now, but I'll explain it later on in other videos. So basically we need a public async for asynchronous task with no return method, because if let's say it was to return something, we would have in here like a bool. This would return a boolean if that's what we want to do with this task. But since there's nothing, it's just going to be task alone. Then we give it the name, and voila, we have the start async method. First off, let's just start by defining our client field, which we defined right up here. And we'll set this to a new Discord socket client. Then, with our client, we're going to do client. We're going to do .login async. And then we put in the token type, which would be a bot. And then we put in the token, which is a string right here. Now you're going to see it's underlined with green because we're in an async method, and we're calling an async method, but we don't have await. You always need to add await before your async methods, because that's how it runs asynchronously. This is a task. When you have await in front of it, it awaits the task and then returns whatever variable into the await. Since there's nothing that returns from this task, it returns nothing. Now, right in here, which is the string, we need to put in our token. So this is where you go back to your Discord application, you copy the token, come back, paste it right in here. But we're not quite done. We have actually 2 more lines to add. So now we're just going to start off with the await, because I know it's going to be an async method, and it will be start async. Now that we have our async method all running, what we can do for the static main void method is we're actually just going to make this an arrow function into a new program. Then we'll call the start async method, then we call get awaiter, and then we finally call get result. Now as to what these specifically mean, it's not that important. It just goes to show that it creates a new instance of this program class, and then it runs this start async method, which is right here. Now if we were to try to run this, what happens is it just opens up and closes instantly. The reason for this is because at the end, we need to add the last line of code, which is await task.delay -1. All this does is it just prevents it from closing entirely. So once this is going, the application will not close itself. So now let's run it. And yeah, we don't really see anything, but if we go check in Discord, oh my god, Saucebot! Saucebot is fucking online. This is some clean ass shit. And now you're like, oh my god, dude, it's fucking online. Let's go. Let's do the commands. Wait, what? Why is Saucebot broken? Why is he not answering? Now again, surprisingly enough, we actually need a code in shit to make it work. Huh? It's this. No, you guys probably did not see that one coming. So for this, just to make things a bit cleaner, we're gonna add another file. So you can just right click here on your solution, new item, and then we're going to add a class called command handler. Now this shit is going to do all the saucy stuff that you need to be able to make your bot respond to commands. For this, we're just going to add public. Going to add a constructor. A lot of people use initialize async, but I feel like it does the same thing. A constructor is basically just a method by the name of the class itself. So in this case, it would be command handler. Go like this. And basically what this does is this initializes the constructor the second this object is created. So if I were to go something like this, in here, I do new command handler, just this, not even putting it equal to any variable, just declaring it like this, instantly runs this and runs the constructor, what's inside here. Constructor is just a simple way of saying a method that runs on the creation of a class object. So now in here, in the constructor, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take in a Discord socket client. Now obviously it's going to tell you that this doesn't exist because we're not using the WebSocket namespace. So we'll click that, then we'll give it the name client. Because by convention, parameters in methods should always be camel case, meaning the first letter is lowercase, and then all other words are uppercase after that. Now, before we do anything with this client, we're going to have to declare a private client, so we can pass in the variable we took in from the constructor. And again, we put an underscore before the variable name as convention for private variables. Now, in here, we're simply going to define the client to the client. Now, basically what this means is if I was going to go in program.cs and I try to declare a new command handler and I just go like this, it's going to give me an error because there's no client that was passed inside when you were creating the object. So to fix this, I could just put it right under here so it actually exists and then do underscore client. And this would work. It would cause no issue because it takes in the parameter of a client and I passed in a client. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a private command handler underscore handler. So again, private with the underscore because convention. Now we can do underscore handler equals new command handler and then pass in the client. Now in itself, we actually don't need this variable command handler because simply just by declaring it, even if I remove this, it would do the exact same thing as before. It would initialize the constructor and then it would just run whatever is in here. But for the sake of it, we're just going to keep it like this in case you added some other methods and you need to call them in this program class. Now back in the command handler, we're going to declare a variable called the command service. Now this is going to appear as non-existing, but then you can just add it in from the discord.commands. So now let's actually give this service object a value. New command service. Now let's do a simple method to make sure that we add all the modules, all the commands into our command service, which would be underscore service dot add modules async assembly, and this is going to show up as unknown, so you're going to have to use using system.reflection and then get entry assembly. Now basically what this does is it just checks through your classes and it finds the ones which match the module format for discord.net modules for commands. Now that we've done this, we can start adding our events. So basically you can do client dot pretty much anything, and all these little lightning bolts are events. The one we're going to be concentrating on right now is going to be the message received event. So this means every single time the bot sees a message, it receives a message from wherever. If you send it a message in DMs, if it's in a chat, if it's in a group chat, wherever the fuck it is, it will run this event. Now to declare events, it's always the classic plus equals, and then here would be the event, and now here would be the handle command async method. Now here it says undefined because we didn't make it yet. We have to create the handle command async. So this will be a private async task called handle command async. Now obviously task doesn't exist because we didn't use system.threading.task, and this is saying like, hey, well, what the fuck is going on, dude? You're trying to pass me in this goddamn event that has no parameters, because you see in this event nothing. There's jack, no parameters. And then he's like, whoa, dude, this event, it's supposed to give you the message variable. You see right here it says function socket variable. Right at the end, it does not match the function socket variable. Now there is the task, so we have the task part, but we don't have the socket message variable. So why don't we do that? Socket message s. Now I'm giving it the variable name s because it's a socket message. We're actually going to change this to make it an actual message which we can use later on in our code. So to do that, we're just going to create the variable message equal to socket message as socket user message. So now that we've done this, well, what if the message isn't from a user? What if it's from a bot? Then what the fuck happens to this? Because we're casting it by doing as socket user message. We're taking this socket message and casting it as a socket user message. But what if it wasn't a user that sent this message? What would happen? Well, it would be null because the cast would be invalid. So we gotta do a quick check to see if the message equals to null, then return. So if the message doesn't exist, if it's null, then it'll just ignore everything after this return. Now that that's done, let's just create a variable called context and set that equal to a new socket command context, which takes in the parameters of the client and the message. So that's why we passed in the client earlier into the command handler to one, set this event to the message received, and to also declare the command context, because we need the client to be able to do that. Now once that's done, we're going to declare an integer called argpos, which stands for argument position. Now this is basically just going to be for where your command is at in the arguments that it has. It's used for the execution of the command itself. Now, once we have this argument position, we can check if the message starts with the prefix. So the if statement would be if message has char or string prefix. Char is basically just one character, and it would be defined like so. But a string would be defined with the double quotes. Now, I'm going to use the method has char because my prefix is just going to be a exclamation point. And then we need to pass the reference to the argument position. Now, once it's done, you can just open brackets, do var result equals underscore service, which was our service variable for the command service right here, and then execute async, in which we will pass in the context. We'll pass in the arg position. Now, obviously, since this is async, what we're doing right now is this variable, you can see it's actually a task with the result. Since we're not awaiting it, this actually doesn't return the result, but it turns the task that returns a result. So what we're going to have to do is add await in front of it because it's asynchronous. And now the result is the actual result. So now we can check if the result is success, and we'll put an exclamation point in front of it to check if the result failed, and we'll check if the result dot error isn't equal to the command error dot unknown command, because basically what this does is it checks if the result of the execution of this command failed, and if the error of the failure isn't equal to the unknown command. Because basically what this does is this command error is, let's say I did something like that. This command obviously doesn't exist. So what the bot would do would reply, hey, dickhead, that shit you did, it doesn't fucking exist. What are you doing? Which would be extremely annoying, because if people keep using wrong commands and say, hey, you're using the wrong command, I feel it's better to silently fail this when they don't correctly type commands. However, if we were to remove it and just say if it didn't succeed, and then we were to reply with the contact channel, send message async, and then right in here, we pass in the result dot error reason. Now, obviously, we have to await this because it's asynchronous. Now, if we were to do this, and we run this, and we were to try to do something like this, every single command, because we didn't add any commands, there's nothing in this entire bot, but regardless of what you put, it would just say unknown command, and it instantly replies that. So, that is why you always add the check if you don't like that. I mean, some people out of preference might like having a reply that says the command doesn't exist, but I personally don't think that's useful. So, and if the result dot error isn't equal to the command error dot unknown command. Now, obviously, there's a load of different things that could be done with this. This is just the very basic bare minimum, and like there's a character that's hard-coded in. Usually, you'd want to have like a different variable at the top that says, okay, the prefix is equal to this. And also, you usually wouldn't just check if it has the prefix, but you'd also check if it was a mention. But we'll get into that in another video. For now, to get our first command running, what we're going to do, we're going to go in here, we're going to create a new folder, and we're going to name it modules. Now, every single file in here is going to be a module, and it's very important that these classes are public. So we'll add a test module for now. We have to make the class public, because if it's not public, the command handler will not pick it up when it adds the modules here. In service.addModules async, this only picks up public classes. So once we're in here, this class has to inherit the module base. Now, this is going to show up as non-existing, and then we add it from discord.commands, and we're also going to pass in the socket command context. This means that anywhere throughout this code we can use the context variable, which is really useful. Now, for the first command, it's quite easy. You just do these bracket thingies. You do command, then you go like this, pass in the name of it. So this would be test, and then here you type public async task, then this can be the name of whatever. It doesn't fucking matter what the name of the task is. I could go like this, and this would still perfectly run. we also have to import threading.tasks. So now this isn't, yeah, it's just the lax await. So what we can do is await context, which is the variable that we get from this when we use that. When we use the module base, which takes in the socket command context. Context.channel.sendMessageAsync, just like the one we did in here, which takes in a string parameter. Success. So if we were to run this, even though this doesn't matter at all, the name of this has completely indifference of how your commands execute, as long as they're not the same as other commands. You run this, if I were to do $test, success. And the last thing I'd like to show you guys is how to pass in parameters into the command. So basically, every single method, there's this, right? You can put in parameters into the method into how it's supposed to be called. So if I were to put in, let's say, string repeat, this can be the name of whatever. The name of this variable can be whatever the fuck you want, as long as it has the correct type, which would be a string in this case. Then what you can do is you can just take this and then use it in the method itself, because when this is called, it takes in the string repeat. So right here, we could just put repeat in here. So if we were to run this, when we use the test command, the same way it was called before, test, we try to use this, it'll say the input text has too few parameters, which means we weren't using the command correctly, because it takes in a required parameter of repeat. So if I were to do test and then type some random numbers, it repeats those exact numbers. The reason being is because it took in what was in the method and then it passes it back with a send async. You can do this with basically anything. If you want, for example, them to mention another user, you could put in here iGuild user, and this won't exist because we're not using Discord. Then in the send async, what we could do is user, and we can't send this obviously because it's not a string, and this takes in the string parameter. So we can do user.toString, like so. What the user.toString defaults to takes the user object, and it takes their username and their discriminator and puts them back to back. So if we were to run this, and you were to do test, and then @sauce, it repeats the exact username and discriminator of this user. Now, there's loads of different parameters you can put in here. You could put in iRole, which is the interface of a role, and then you can do the same thing that would just repeat out what the role is. Then to add more commands, you basically just copy paste more of these and give them different names, and these have to be different as well. Now, you can overload commands, have the same name of the method, but with just different parameters, but I'm not going to get into that, at least not this video. Anyway, I think I sufficiently covered globally a lot about this. In the next videos, I'm going to go much faster pace, because this was like, I was even fucking killing myself when I was explaining this shit so slowly, every single detail. Next videos, I'm going to be ramping up the speed. Every single time we're going to be learning some new sauce. And remember, IntelliSense is your friend. If you have any questions, join my Discord server, be sure to ask me, or just post something in the comments. Hope you fucking enjoyed the video. See you guys later.